In order to live an extraordinary and abundant life, you must focus on your internal battle and win within. My name is Randy Wilson, and welcome to the Rich Mind Podcast. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Rich Mind Podcast. Today, super excited to bring you a short little series as we get really close to wrapping up the year of 2024. I'm going to create 6 separate episodes of a little mini series that I hope you will find super valuable. They're going to be based on the work of Napoleon Hill and his great book, Think and Grow Rich. I have a copy of it here. If you don't have a copy of this book in your library, you need to, number one, first off, get a copy, right? You can find them everywhere, right? Use bookstores, Amazon. Get a copy of Think and Grow Rich. That will be a great asset to have in your library. But today I want to go through 6 of his 13 principles. So he has 13 success principles that, when combined together, have the ability to help you become rich. And today I want to break those down into 6 separate steps. The ones that I feel have been the biggest impact in my life. I'm going to leave it up to you to go through the additional 7. But at this point, let's dive into 6 of them and let's bring 2024 to a close in a powerful way and get ready to really accomplish greater things going into 2025, which is what I would like to have happen for you. Like I said, it's been 2024 has been a great year. It's been a challenging year. But with some of these success principles that we're going to talk about today, I think that if you can comprehend, understand, and really apply them into your life, you can really start making some significant changes positively in your life moving forward. So the first principle that Napoleon Hill covered in Think and Grow Rich that I really want to cover today is the principle of persistence. And I've got a story that goes along with that. It's something actually that was just brought up to my attention here in the last week, maybe 10 days. A good friend of mine, a friend of the podcast, Greg Young. We were having one of our Mastermind calls, and we had the discussion of something about persistence, about the ability to stick to a goal, stick to a plan, which is what persistence really is. So let's dive into that story, and then maybe I'll elaborate a little bit more on how I see persistence and how it's affected my life and how it could positively impact your life moving forward as well. So the year was approximately 2011, 2012, something like that. And I was just in the early beginnings of my personal development journey. I was just beginning to read books like Think and Grow Rich. I talk about Napoleon Hill a lot, Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field. I have a copy of Lead the Field up here on my bookshelf. And then Jim Rohn. Those are probably the 3 biggest impacts people that have had on my life as far as from a personal development standpoint. But in Napoleon Hill's, he talks about persistence. So back then, I was like I am now, looking to create content, looking to add value to whoever at that point, right? YouTube was relatively early in its stages. I think YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, came out mid 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, maybe 8, something like that. I could be wrong by that, so don't quote me 100%. But I just know it was in 2011-ish, 12. It wasn't what it is today. Let's just put it that way. But I had a vision, or I had an idea, and I had a feeling that video was going to be powerful. I had a feeling that if I could produce content via video, which, as I mentioned back then, this was not as popular as it is today. I mean, today you hear about people creating YouTube channels, faceless channels. I have a channel. You might have a channel. Who knows? And if you don't, I encourage you to get one. But the point that I want to make with this is that back then, I think this was 12, 13 years ago, YouTube wasn't what it was back then. And so it was hard also. I had a little handheld camera. It wasn't the little micro or little camera that I'm looking into today. It was actually a handheld camera that I had it stationed on a tripod. I had some terrible lights. It was awful. Looking back at it, it was awful. It was the best what I could do at that time. I'll tell you that early on in my journey, when I was discovering things, I was quickly to implement the ideas and the strategies. And I would try to go as far as I possibly could. But that's where the persistence, and that's the main theme of this story here today that I want to leave with you, is that I didn't stick to it. Can you imagine where I would be if I would have kept going with my channel? And you can actually go back; it's actually still there. That's where this this conversation with Greg just the other day, we're talking about sticking with the podcast, right? That's where my persistence is today. I'm sticking with doing the podcast. I'm going to show up at least a single episode every single week, whether it's a solo like this one, or if it's a recording or an interview. I'm going to show up. That's the point. But the lesson is from back then. The channel, you can search for it. Go to YouTube right now and search for At Your Focused Vision. Search for Your Focused Vision. And if you do that, you're going to see me 12-ish years ago. Obviously, I've changed physically. I'm not even going to go down that road. But at the point is that, that was, I was in my late 30s, definitely mid to late 30s at that time. I'm 50 today. And I was just starting to figure it out. I was trying to hit record. As I mentioned, it was a fumbled mess. I'd have to hit record at the camera, run over to the wall. I turned one of my walls into a whiteboard, got a piece of paneling, and I actually turned it into a whiteboard. The lighting was bad. The audio was bad. I had this cabled or a hardline like lavalier mic that I was using. It wasn't, I say terrible now because obviously I'm comparing it to what I feel like I can be able to do today. But the point is that it wasn't great, but I was able to get going. And here's where the persistence came in. That's where it was difficult. It was hard. I was 100% pushing up against a lot of my beliefs at that time, a lot of what I thought I could do, a lot of what I thought I should do. I was beginning to create courses for folks based on the Your Focused Vision idea that I had back in the day. And when I was pushing up against those comfort zones and those barriers, I shut it down. I stopped. I stopped going. And as I mentioned, can you imagine where I would be if I just would have kept going, even if I would have posted something once a month? I mean, think about that. Once a month over the last 12 years, if I would have just been consistent with my message, consistent with whatever I wanted to bring to the world. Pivots is what I've learned. That's the word that I've used, and that's the word I'm using all the time, especially now with the podcast. So let's now fast forward to today. Almost 2 years ago, it was April of 2023 is when I had to think about that for a second, is when I launched the podcast. And I made the decision, I made a dedicated decision at that moment that I was not going to stop. I've got to keep going. I've made changes. I've had a lot of interviews. I've interviewed friends. I've had solo interviews. We're putting together a little bit of a series here today to wrap up 2024. But the point is that I can't stop. And I've committed to pivoting versus stopping. And that's where I want to leave it with you here today. Think about in your life, where do you stop? At what points do you stop? You'll have and hear me talk about a lot on the podcast about there are upper limits, right? You'll get triggered by a thought, an emotion, something like that will trigger something inside of you. It can be just random thoughts. So for me, a lot of times, sometimes for me, I'll get physically ill. I'll start to feel bad when I start to push up against that upper limit for myself. My mind will begin to race. I'll start thinking about past circumstances that may or may not be true. They're just past stories that I've made up that seem true but are not. And when I go down those rabbit trails in my past, I've always stopped. And that Your Focused Vision YouTube channel is a perfect example. I encourage you to go check that out. I was on there the other day with Greg, and it's actually it's quite interesting, quite comical to see that back in the day. I was trying hard, and I got some content out there. I had some subscribers, right? Had a few, which is pretty cool. But the point is I want to make sure that you hear and understand that as you continue to grow, as you continue to reach for a bigger self, knowing that you are capable of so much more, That's where with the podcast for myself, I have an idea. I have visions that I want to bring to the world. Not exactly sure how I'm going to do it yet. Not exactly sure what that looks like yet. But here's what I do know. Through persistence, I know that I cannot stop. I have to keep going. I have to pivot, change, move, but don't stop. And that's what I want to leave you here with today. So, as I mentioned, think back through your life and think about even into your future. What is something that you can commit to that you know will move the needle forward, whether it's from a business standpoint, personal relationship standpoint, maybe it's something to do with your own personal development, maybe it's something to do with your financial education. What is something that you can commit to for the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months? That you will not stop no matter what you commit. There's a line in the sand and you will not fall back behind it. You will always keep moving forward. You will not fall victim to this negative self-talk. I always talk about winning within, that chatter that's going on trying to keep you moving forward when you know you should and you know you could. It's just a matter of just keeping taking steps. One part of the persistence piece within Napoleon Hill, he talks about having a mastermind to help you. And we've talked about masterminds here on the podcast before. I mentioned Greg. Greg Young is a great friend of mine. We have it's not weekly calls. We have bi-weekly calls at this point, but it's a great resource. Find someone that you can have in your close proximity, whether it's friends, family, but somebody that has the belief system in you, right? Has the ability to pump you up, help you realize that you are more than capable of achieving greater things in your life. And you can absolutely do that. And I encourage you to find someone in your life to, like Greg has been for me, to become better, become more, because you're more than capable of doing that. And I encourage you to do that today. So I think we're going to wrap that one up today. So the point with persistence is that just don't stop. Keep moving. Develop the skills, develop the self-discipline. Don't stop. Be persistent. And I promise you're going to achieve more things coming into 2025 than you can ever imagine. And I wish that for you and your family moving forward. So go out there, focus on being great. That was always my sign off on the Your Focused Vision. And I'm going to use that here on the Rich Mind podcast. Focus on being great. Go out there and create the life you want. Create the life you love through personal development, through some financial education, through building a business, through being comfortable getting on camera and creating your own YouTube channel and being consistent and be persistent. You never know where that could lead. And I just can't wait to hear about the success stories that you have going forward. So as I mentioned, go out there, focus on being great. I look forward to coming back with the next principle. We're going to dive into 5 more of the success principles from Napoleon Hill, and we'll do that here on the upcoming episodes. I look forward to talking to you then. Bye now. Thank you for joining me on the Rich Mind podcast. And remember, your external world is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. So focus every day on that internal battle and win within. Until next time, my friends.